Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Carly and today's video is going to be all about sleep training. Sleep training is something that completely changed my life and my family's life, and it's something that I never expected to be a part of our story, and so I'm really excited to share with you about our experience. So a little bit of background. I am a really sensitive, soft-hearted person, and so sleep training was just not something that I ever expected to do. I was of the opinion that it was cruel, that I couldn't imagine how any mom could just leave her baby to cry, and so I was just like, no, I'm not doing it. I read something on a breastfeeding website when Leo was really young about how sleep training doesn't work because instead of teaching your baby to fall asleep on their own, what it does is they stop crying, but they're still distressed and they just realize that no one's going to respond to them. And that like scarred me. In hindsight, it feels like it was emotionally manipulative. And I was scared to sleep train because I didn't want Leo to be scarred for life. I didn't want him to feel like I wasn't going to respond to him or feel like I didn't love him. I was totally heartbroken by the image of Leo alone in his crib, not crying out because he knew I wasn't going to come. So for me, I read that and I was like, sleep training? No, we're not doing that. And then the 4-month sleep regression hit. And at this time, Leo was sleeping in a sidecar bassinet against our bed. And it was really starting to get to us. Alec and I would trade off who would have to sleep on the side of the bed with the bassinet. And at that time, Leo was sleeping with a pacifier. And whoever was on that side of the bed was up every like 45 minutes, popping the pacifier back in his mouth. Because he was sleeping with the pacifier and he was still swaddled because we were too scared to take the swaddle off. So he's 4 months old. We're constantly popping the pacifier back in. None of the three of us were really getting much sleep, and I knew that something needed to change. And one of my friends told me about her sleep training experience, and she recommended some podcasts from a pediatrician. She's on Instagram as Peds Doc Talk. Her name is Dr. Mona. If you don't follow her, I really recommend it. She's been really helpful for me, but she has a whole series of podcasts about sleep training, and I'll link them in the description box below. So I spent like a whole day just listening to Dr. Mona's podcast on sleep training, and it made me feel good enough that Alec and I decided to give it a try. So there are a lot of different sleep training methods out there. Some are more gradual and some go more quickly and involve more protesting from the baby. And we were so exhausted that we decided to try the Ferber method. So essentially the Ferber method is that you let the baby fuss until they fall asleep, but you pop in at regular intervals to check on them, to reassure them, so you can let them know that you are still there. So we would go in there and we would say, Leah James, I love you so much. You're doing such a good job. I'm really proud of you. I love you. Good night. And just like walk out. And then the intervals slowly get longer and longer and longer as you go. The first night, I think our check-ins were at 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes. And then it would just repeat every 15 minutes until he fell asleep. And the next day was 5, 7, 10, 15. The following night, just 7, 10, 15, then 10, 15, and just 15. So that's kind of how we chose to do our intervals. We chose this method because I wanted something that was going to work pretty quickly. I wanted to get it over with quickly. I was okay with it being a little bit more difficult if it was over soon versus kind of drawing it out with one of the more gradual approaches. I just wanted it done with. So we chose this method because there was the reassurance of the pop-ins, and for Ferber, it's just as much reassurance for you as the parent as it is for your child. So here's just a few considerations from our experience of sleep training. First was the length of time that it took. From day one, our very first time doing it, to Leo putting himself to sleep consistently every night was probably somewhere around 8 to 10 days. After day 4 or 5, he was consistently doing really well. And then by that last, day 8, 9, 10, he was doing an amazing job. We'd put him down in his crib awake and he would just kind of roll over and fall asleep. So it did end up working pretty quickly for us. We discovered along the way, and I think a lot of parents who choose Ferber kind of have a similar experience to us. We discovered that the pop-ins actually did more harm than good at a certain point because Leo was kind of working it out on his own, and when we popped in there, we sort of interrupted him. And so when we think of cried out as cruel, that we're just leaving a baby all by themselves to just cry, but they're actually kind of working through it in their head, and they're kind of doing a bit of problem solving. And when you go in there, you kind of interrupt that natural process. And so we saw it more as observing Leo from a distance. We would obviously go in if there was something that required our intervention, but for the most part, we really wanted to let him work it out on his own. And I think that that was really positive. So we did fewer and fewer pop-ins as the days went on because Leo didn't need them and they actually made things worse or kept him up for longer. And I think a lot of parents who choose a method like Ferber discover that and back off on the check-ins just like we did. Although I know not every parent does that and everybody sort of does it differently. I want to talk a little bit about night weaning. And so night weaning is when your child stops eating overnight. And we had a long way to go when it came to night weaning because the way that we were solving Leo's wake up was by feeding him. It was a guaranteed way to get him to fall asleep, and so I was feeding him like 5, 6, 7 times a night just to help him fall back to sleep for the next hour or 2-hour stretch. We had a long ways to go to kind of drop those night feeds. But I wasn't 100% sure that I wanted to or that I needed to drop the night feeds altogether. And this one is really huge. We didn't talk to our pediatrician before we started sleep training until I heard our pediatrician say you can stop feeding him overnight. I wasn't comfortable not feeding him overnight. I wanted to make sure our pediatrician was good with it before I stopped it. That being said, Leo is 8.5 months old and he still feeds overnight. And that's because I'm a big old softie and I kind of like getting to go in there overnight and cuddle him and feed him. It's an important part to me of our breastfeeding relationship and I don't regret it. I know that I could stop feeding him overnight if I wanted to, but I don't really want to. So the way that we went down from all those feedings down to 1 or 2 a night was by setting time thresholds. And so our first feed would happen 6 hours after he went to sleep. So if he went to bed at 7, 6 hours later is 1 a.m. If he woke up before 1 a.m., we would allow him to work it out on his own using the Ferber method, going to do check-ins if we needed. If he woke up after 1 a.m., he would get a feed. And then the next feed, if there was a second feed overnight, would come at 3 hours after that feed. So if Leo ate at 1 and then he woke up again at 4 or later, then I would feed him again. If he woke up before 4, again, we would sort of let him figure it out or go do our check-ins as usual. That's kind of how we ended up cutting down the night feeds. But like I said, we haven't entirely night weaned. I probably will here soon, but I haven't done it yet and I'm okay with the fact that we haven't done it. I also want to touch really quick on sleep training programs. I know a lot of people swear by the program Taking Cara Babies, and I think if that's something you want to do, that's great. But from my understanding of Taking Cara Babies, it really just is repackaged Ferber. So Cara essentially takes the basics of the Ferber method and sort of repackages it with acronyms and sort of easy to digest charts and things like that. And so what you're buying is not a revolutionary thing that you can only get from her, but it's the way that she presents it. I do think she presents her material well, but I don't think that it's revolutionary, and I don't think you need to purchase Taking Cara Babies at all to sleep train your baby. Unless you like really desire to have it laid out for you, I wouldn't recommend going with a program like Taking Cara Babies because it's so expensive and you can get almost the exact same thing through free resources. It just might require a little bit more research and a little bit more effort from you. So I waited until Leo was entirely sleep trained overnight to start tackling naps. So when we first started sleep training, we started with nights and we ditched the passy, ditched the swaddle, and sleep trained all at the same time. So we kind of just did everything together. But for naps, he still got swaddle and he still got his pacifier. I wanted to make sure nights were perfect before I worried about naps. Once he was doing really well with night sleep, that's when I tackled naps. And I've mentioned in previous vlogs that we do something called crib hour, and this is when we started doing that. And crib hour is essentially the principle of leaving the baby in the crib for an hour after they fall asleep, whether or not they wake up before that hour is up. And eventually the goal is to help them change sleep cycles and lengthen their naps. And we're starting to see some success. Gosh, 3.5 months later after starting crib hour. So if naps are hard for you, especially if your baby is in that 5, 6, 7 month range, don't worry, things will hopefully get better. They have gotten better for us finally. But it was only when Leo was fully sleep trained at night that I decided to start naps. So we did naps and nights separately. I know some people do naps and nights together. It's really up to your preference. My last thoughts on sleep training, it has completely changed my life and changed my husband's life and changed Leo's life. We are all sleeping better. We are all more well rested. And this has just been such a gift for our family. And if I could tell myself back when I was scared of sleep training what I would gain by doing it, I would have changed my tune on it a lot sooner than I did. And so I want to encourage you, if you're considering it, but you're not sure, I just want to tell you that if you think it's the right fit for your family, it's worth doing. I won't pretend it's not hard. When we were on the early days of Ferber, I would actually get in the shower every single night and take like 25-minute showers just so I wouldn't have to hear the crying. It was hard. It's hard on a mom to hear her baby crying, but it is worth it. I'm on the other side of it and I will do it for every baby in the future because it has just been so great for our family to be well rested. And Leo is a happier guy during the day. I'm a better rested mom, so I'm a better mom. So I have no regrets about it. If you're considering it, I think it is worth it. And if you're worried about hearing a lot of crying, there are other methods besides Ferber. I will link in the description box below a Facebook group that I joined that completely changed my life, which is crazy to say about a Facebook group, I know, but the group is called Respectful Sleep Training / Learning, and they have just a wealth of information about wake windows and nap training and dropping naps and sleep training and all sorts of things that just helped me get through this process. So I'll be linking them in the description box below. I recommend joining this Facebook group because it has just been such a game changer for me. But I also want to say, if you are not sure about sleep training, don't feel like you have to. If what you're doing is working for you and your family, stick with what's working. There's no wrong way to do it. I think that if rocking your baby to sleep, nursing your baby to sleep, co-sleeping, whatever it is that you do, if that works for you, do it. So ultimately, yes, this is about my experience with sleep training, but what I want you to take away from this is you should do what works for your family, and if you think it might be sleep training, it's worth giving it a try. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this was kind of like a sit down and talk to the camera video again, but I love talking about sleep training because I thought it was bad and it has changed my life, and I want other moms to know that it is an option and it's a great option if it's something that works for you. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I post a new motherhood content every Monday and Thursday. Also, if you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button and let me know in the comments if you have any more questions about our sleep training experience. And also, I'd love to hear about yours. How did you get your baby to sleep? Did you sleep train or did you choose to do something else? Leave your experiences in the comments and I would love to read them. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.